The mirror was merciless. Claire Weston, once the commanding CEO of a multi-million-dollar tech empire, sat in her wheelchair under the soft restaurant lights. Her lipstick was perfect, her navy dress chosen carefully to remind herself she was still a woman, still alive, but her eyes told a different story. It had been a year since the accident. A drunk driver, a mangled car, and a spine that would never heal. The empire she built no longer needed her. She had handed over the reins. Boardrooms that once trembled at her presence now moved on without her. Friends grew scarce, colleagues whispered, and the man she thought she'd marry had quietly slipped away. Now, she stared at her reflection in the glass and muttered, "Why did I even agree to this? A blind date. Ridiculous. The kind her well-meaning assistant had set up because, apparently, Claire, you need to feel human again." Human. She hadn't felt human in months. She felt invisible. The clink of glasses and hum of conversation filled the upscale restaurant. She waited. Minutes dragged by. No sign of her date. Her chest tightened. Had he seen the chair and bolted? The door burst open. In walked a man who clearly didn't belong. Grease-stained jeans. A plaid shirt rolled at the elbows. Hands still dark from engine oil. He glanced around the room like he'd stepped onto the wrong planet. Claire blinked. Oh God. No. Please don't let this be him. But then his eyes landed on her. Not with pity. Not with hesitation. Just recognition, like she was the only person in the room. He walked over, fumbling with a rag he pulled from his pocket, wiping his hands as if scrubbing away the evidence of where he came from. He cleared his throat. "I think I'm not where I'm supposed to be." He glanced at the bar, then at her table, then back at her. "But you look like someone who shouldn't be sitting here alone. Mind if I stay?" It wasn't her date. That much was clear. But something in his voice, earnest, unpolished, almost boyish, made her nod before she could stop herself. "Fine," she said coolly. "But if you're selling me car insurance, you'll regret it." He chuckled, sliding into the seat. "Mechanic, actually. But I'll try not to hand you a bill." His name was Jake. No pretense, no polished lines. Just Jake. He talked about fixing engines, about the beauty of a machine that roared back to life after being given up for dead. He told stories of small-town garages, of neighbors who paid with pies instead of cash, of finding joy in the little victories. And somewhere between his clumsy jokes and his infectious grin, Claire did something she hadn't done in a year. She laughed. Not the polite laugh she offered in boardrooms. Not the brittle laugh she used to mask her pain. A real, belly-deep laugh that startled her as much as it startled him. Jake's eyes softened. He didn't stare at the chair. He didn't tiptoe around her injury. He just saw her. "You've got a laugh that could fix an engine," he said with a grin. She rolled her eyes, but warmth bloomed in her chest. For the first time since the accident, she felt like more than her broken body. Just as dessert menus arrived, a low rumble shook the air. Claire froze. It wasn't traffic. It wasn't thunder. It was the unmistakable roar of rotor blades. A Black Hawk helicopter streaked across the skyline outside the restaurant window, smoke trailing from its tail. Gasps filled the room. Diners stood, craning their necks as the aircraft wobbled dangerously, descending fast. "Dear God," Claire whispered. Jake shot to his feet. His chair screeched back. His eyes locked on the spiraling bird. "That's no sightseeing chopper," he muttered. "That's military hardware." Before she could ask what he meant, he grabbed her hand, just for a second, and said, "I know that bird. I trained on them. They're going to need a pilot." And then he was gone, sprinting out the door as the restaurant erupted in chaos. Outside, the street had cleared. Sirens wailed in the distance. The Black Hawk shuddered as it descended toward an open construction site, the pilot inside clearly struggling. Jake ran straight toward it, no hesitation, no thought of his own safety. Claire wheeled herself closer, her heart pounding. She remembered something. Years ago, her company had worked with the military, building flight control software for helicopters. She had sat in those very cockpits during test runs. She knew the systems, the warning signals, the emergency overrides. "Jake," she screamed across the roar of blades. "Check the hydraulic lines, left side. And reroute through the secondary." Somehow, he heard her. Their eyes locked, and without question, he followed her words. His hands moved across the controls with rough precision, his body instinctively remembering what training had left behind. She shouted instructions, he executed them, and together, an unlikely pair, one on the ground and one in the cockpit, they steadied the bird. The Black Hawk thudded to the ground, hard but safe. The crowd erupted into cheers. Lives had been saved. Jake climbed out, sweaty, trembling, eyes wide. He looked at Claire like she was the miracle, not him. The sirens quieted. The soldiers thanked Jake, but he waved them off, walking straight toward Claire. "You saved that bird," he said softly. She shook her head. "No, we did. Together." For a long moment, they just looked at each other, the chaos around them fading into silence. Then, with a crooked smile, he added, "Guess this wasn't such a disaster after all." Her throat tightened. She had walked into this night expecting nothing. She thought love, laughter, and purpose had abandoned her forever. Yet here was a grease-stained mechanic who had wandered in by mistake, who had reminded her that broken wings, like broken people, could still find a way to fly. Tears stung her eyes as she whispered, "Thank you, Jake. For making me feel alive again." He grinned, shoving his greasy rag back into his pocket. "Anytime, Claire. And hey, maybe next time, I'll wear a tie." She laughed again, and this time, it wasn't just laughter. It was hope. Sometimes the right person doesn't arrive when we expect them. Sometimes they walk in by accident, carrying oil-stained hands and a heart brave enough to try. And sometimes, in the middle of disaster, humanity reminds us of its greatest gift, the power to lift each other up. Because even when life takes away what we thought defined us, kindness, courage, and connection can give us back something even greater, hope.